Oh, shit. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Pro Wrestle Zone podcast. As always, this is Dan the Beast. Alongside with me is the DVD Freak. And continuing on with the year 2002, we are now on Backlash. Backlash took place April 21st of 2002, live from Kansas City, Missouri. And your hosts were, as always, Jim Ross and Gary the King Waller. Um, Interesting facts about this pay per view. This was the first WWE or WWF pay per view after the brand extension. This was also the first time WWE hosted a pay per view in this arena, in this city. First time in 4 years since the tragic accident of Owen Hart. Um, you know, initially we thought, or I should say initially I thought, this was going to be an attempt to form two separate companies. Because you figure Raw, SmackDown, Vince had no more competition. And this was right around the time Vince was probably like, hey, I'm bored. Time to get some ratings going. So why not split the roster, have some go to Raw and some go to SmackDown? And it wasn't bad. It definitely wasn't a bad first attempt. Obviously, they were still going through the process of the name change, trying to develop new stars, especially the SmackDown brand, because I always felt like the SmackDown brand was very underutilized until they practically shown what they were made of. We had the SmackDown 6. You had Angle, Mysterio, Benoit, Cena, Lesnar, and Guerrero, if I haven't mentioned him already. But
Chavo was part of the SmackDown 6.
And okay, yeah. So Chavo too, but this was the first. This was actually the first pay-per-view as well, after being released on home video, to have the WWE logo. As you guys can see, as DVD Freak presents the Backlash pay-per-view as the WWE logo, but as soon as you pop into this, it's still going to be advertised as a WWF pay-per-view. Going into this pay-per-view, Hulk Hogan had already quit the NWO, and he resurged back to his old red and yellow colors, even though he had done that in WCW back around 1998, 1999. But this was around the time Hulk was starting to make a resurgence as a big name since returning to the WWF back at No Way Out. And the NWO basically responded by attacking him and replacing him with X-Pac, who was also a former member of the NWO. And he had came back, I believe, the same week after WrestleMania. So that was, I can't say it was necessarily a treat, but it was always good to see an original member of the WCW version of the NWO, but also it was more of like a clique type of affiliated type deal with this group, as we would see later on. Shawn Michaels would join the group, and they would later try to acquire Triple H within the storyline, and practically the rest is history after that. But getting into this pay-per-view, DVD Freak, your thoughts?
As you all know, I'm a huge Ruthless Aggression era fan, and I absolutely love the brand extension. It was a way to utilize talent, because think about it, you have ECW, WCW, and WWF talent here. So this was a great way of utilizing them and making sure you could have breakout stars. You could, let everyone have their time to shine and opportunity. But at the same time, it gave competition within the company, which I always liked that dynamic. There was very much Raw and there was very much SmackDown. They, if you look at like shoot interviews with former guys, they'll always say this was a legit attempt at topping the other. especially Paul Heyman. He always said his goal was to beat SmackDown every single week. And to me, this was the glory years of SmackDown. I could watch any SmackDown show from 2002 and 2003 and just have the absolute time of my life. So this was a great time to be a fan. And you can see a lot shaping up here because I've always said the latter half of 2002 was always better than the first half. And you can start to see it shaping up here. You have some great rivalries going into this, like Kurt Angle and Edge. They had a phenomenal rivalry at this time. And we'll talk more about this later. I'm not a fan of Hogan winning the title, but you have to understand how hot he was at this time. So if they were going to cash in on him, now was the time. So, even after, especially after like Triple H, he won the Rumble, and then he won them in the main event of WrestleMania. Just to take it away from him at Backlash, come on. I may not be the world's biggest Triple H fan. I'm kind of neutral with Triple H, depending on the era. But at this time, I thought this was, no pun intended, his time. And I felt like they should have just kept the title on him and let him have a strong year with it.
Right. Like I said in the last review, I mean, that whole rivalry, nonetheless, was just based upon Stephanie McMahon getting in the way in Triple H's relationship. But also, this was a way of giving Hulk that resurgence of possibly being like one of the top guys again around this time, despite him not being the most agile. And you know what? So funny. I was actually talking to Nick Kirk about this today, and we happened to mention Hulk Hogan in the discussion, and he was telling me, I was telling him, I was like, listen, when it comes to Hulk Hogan, he wasn't known for moves. He wasn't known for doing all these athletic moves. He was just known for making moments. He was known for making, big household name draws and basically money. That's all it was. It was all about the money. 'Cause if it wasn't about the money, there would be no Hulk Hogan.
Let me ask you something. Was he asking you about Chris Jericho?
He was.
Yeah, yeah, he asked me too.
Talking about being like a big draw or a big household name in wrestling, and I basically told him like he is in some aspects, because when you look at Jericho, he's very articulate because obviously he can multitask between doing wrestling and music, and he's over in both. He's that one guy that you could look at in wrestling and say, hey, his theme, his songs that he's, made his entrance with throughout the years is what made Chris Jericho. Also, obviously he has a lot more athleticism. He could show a lot more agility in the ring opposed to Hulk Hogan. Maybe not as much nowadays. Obviously, Jericho's getting up there in age and a bit tweaked down. I wouldn't necessarily say that he draws tickets, but he draws entertainment. And he's definitely, I guess you would say, a commodity comedy figure these past couple of years, or as always. But he's definitely dwindled down as being one of those guys, not only being, I guess you would say, one of the pioneers of AEW, but also being one of those guys to put over the next generation of superstars.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, we had talked about it earlier. We had a pretty good conversation about it. So, yeah, shout out to Nick Kurtz. Go check out his channel. I'll be making a video with him later tonight.
Oh, awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, I'll definitely looking forward to that.
Yeah. So, shall we get in? Oh, there's one thing I wanted to talk about real quick. It's odd seeing the Kemper Arena. Anytime they go there, it's just odd. I'm always looking at the rafters every time.
Yeah, when I saw the outside of the arena, it kind of gave me a little bit of chills because it's like, obviously they're not going to mention it,
No.
but obviously fans who were probably in attendance for that show were probably at this show as well, and we're probably looking up and saying, "Thank God, nothing like this is going to happen." Because I'm not going to lie, I saw glimpses of Over the Edge on the network, and I know it's like highly edited and everything, but it was kind of like one of those things where you're tempted to watch it, like how bad could have this been? Obviously, it was bad enough because we lost somebody, but just going throughout the show, and I remember just watching the mixed tag team match between Jarrett and Deborah going up against Nicole Bass and Val Venus, and obviously JR's the way JR presented himself during commentary was just very, I want to say nonchalant, but he wasn't as enthusiastic as he would throughout the entire show. And I know they cut like some type of camera angle where they had like the camera angle all the way back, and I think it was just to prevent showing that shot of Jarrett looking up in the ceiling or looking up in the rafters, because I know he said during one of his interviews that he looked up to see like, wow, how high did he fall from?
That's
But anyway, going
yeah.
on with this show here. Definitely a treat. The first match that we had on here was for the WWE Cruiserweight Championship between Billy Kidman and Tajiri. Now, getting into this match, first of all, both of these guys are highly over, despite being cruiserweights. And secondly, they can wrestle. These guys got a huge pop. One of my favorite moments was Tajiri trying to go for a back elbow handspring, and Billy Kidman just hits him with a drop kick in the back, and the crowd just pops.
Yeah.
I thought that was so fucking cool. But one mistake that Billy Kidman should have known by Tajiri is not to set him up for a power bomb. Why would you do it? He's going to spray mist in your face.
Yeah, I'm a huge Tajiri fan. He is, back then, as a kid, he was one of my favorites. And I just love the Mist. I know I think Rick and I had talked about how much we just love the Mist. And it's just like, I love how unpredictable it can be. Yeah, obviously the last thing you expect, because this was still kind of early on in Tajiri's career, in WWF, that is. Obviously, he had been other places, but not everyone was like, oh, this is where the Mist is coming. So it was always that what if factor of, oh, he's setting up for a powerbomb, here it goes, and then you got the Mist. And that's not a spot you would expect, the Mist and the powerbomb. So I do love this finish.
Yeah. Surprisingly, this was a good cruiserweight match from the WWF at that time. One thing that kind of bothers me as a pet peeve is them still having the WCW design of the Cruiserweight Championship, which obviously they would change within like a month or so, but I just always find that as a big pet peeve. Like, okay, you're calling it the WWF Cruiserweight Championship when it has the big words WCW right on the side. So it's like, it kind of kills it. But you know what? Unfortunately, the cruiserweight division at this time, it kind of necessitated the burial of the division before it got so over that it screwed everything up. Because like the cruiserweight, I would say the cruiserweight division was good up until 2007. I mean, not saying that the cruiserweight division isn't bad now. I mean, half of the roster is probably cruiserweights nowadays. But at the same time, it's not as over as being like one of those exclusive matches to a certain brand. Because you got to look at it. Back in the day, when you had the Raw Women's Championship, that was Raw exclusive. when you had the Cruiserweight Championship, that was SmackDown exclusive. If you wanted to see the Cruiserweights, you had to tune into SmackDown. Nowadays, you watch Raw and SmackDown, which I highly feel bad for you if you do. But
Yeah.
it's like you can watch these Cruiserweights anywhere. They even have their own show. Does that show even exist? 205 Live? It's like
Is it still live?
I
I remember when I went to SmackDown 1000, they pre-taped 205 Live before it. So I'm just like, why call it live? Like they were literally taping it.
right.
But I liked how they treated the cruiserweights in like 2016 and 17. They would change the ropes, they would get it all, all ramped up. But I mean, I forget that there's even the cruiserweight title's in NXT now, right?
Yeah, it's now known
Say
as the NXT Cruiserweight title, which is still not bad. I mean, it's gone through a few modifications, which I like. They finally added the black strap because that purple strap was just too damn loud, in my opinion. And obviously, they did some rearrangements with the platings and everything, so it definitely looks like a more prestigious title as appearance wise.
Well, that's one of the only titles that looks prestigious nowadays in that company. So
yeah, but other than that, this match definitely wasn't a bad start. I mean, another thing I would probably say, I know I mentioned earlier, not the power bomb to Jerry. You could say the same thing for Billy Kidman because if you were to set Billy Kidman up for a power bomb, he's going to hit you with that face buster.
yeah.
But going on to one of the segments here, we had Bradshaw and Farouk, having a little joyful reunion, but it's like kind of awkward, you would say, because it's like, you guys just got drafted like 2 fucking weeks ago, and here you are making compliments like, oh, hey, he looks great. Like, oh yeah, maybe he grew like a couple inches of his hair. But you guys only been away for like 2 fucking weeks. It hasn't even been a year.
Well,
So
here's my problem with this, because the next match, obviously, Farouk was involved in. Why have this segment? You would have got a 10 times bigger pop if you didn't have this segment before it, which was already foreshadowing them making an appearance together.
right.
Like, get rid of this whole segment completely and then have Farouk come out as that little surprise again. Like, that would have been cool. So I feel like this segment ruined the next match in a lot of ways. It's just like you ruined the surprise factor there because you literally just saw them talking minutes before.
Yeah, right. So that was basically a bad build up right there. But getting into this match, we had Scott Hall, which this would be his final WWF pay per view before being released from the company in May. He's accompanied by X Pac as he takes on Bradshaw, being accompanied by his former APA buddy Farouk. Now, this was during a time where, this was during Bradshaw's second or third failed singles run because he's had a couple singles runs since I want to say 94 or 95.
Yeah.
He was known as Just Talk Bradshaw. After he broke up with Barry Windham and the New Blackjacks, they decided, hey, let's make him a single star again. That didn't work out. Ended up forming a tag team with Farouk known as the Alkalites, then the APA. Then they finally decided to split them up, which that literally had no fucking point because you ended up putting them together by the end of 2002. Same thing with the Dudley Boys.
And the Hardys as well. They put them back together.
And you know what? Not surprisingly, but the way I see it, once he stopped copying Stan Hansen and started copying Ted DiBiase, that's when JBL got over. Let's just put it that way.
Like,
well,
I legitimately hate JBL just because that's heat right there. Like, he was a true heel. I can appreciate his talent and I love him as a talent. But like back in the day, I fucking hated him. Like, and that's on him. Like that just shows that character worked.
and basically how this match was set up was due to the NWO trashed the old APA office. Like, can't get any more.
Ooh.
You know, I forgot to use the door. Let me come in through this way. Ooh, God forbid we forgot to do any renovation with walls. God forbid we don't even have any fucking oh my god, what is it? Fucking whatever they call that shit. But anyway, um, this was basically just a brawl. Hall playing the typical heel, bailing outside to the ring, throwing the toothpick at Bradshaw. Um, Hall takes over, but does nothing more. But nothing more interesting than punches. Because I guess that was pretty much his arsenal back at that time. Just throwing more punches than he would do maneuvers. Um, Bradshaw shoulder blocks him, and then he hits him with a clothesline from hell. X-Pac puts Hall's foot on the ropes, getting that 2 count. Oh, let this match fucking end already. This match ain't getting any better.
Yeah.
Farouk chases X-Pac around, distracting Bradshaw enough for Hall to hit a low blow and a schoolboy, which this match is like 5 minutes or so, maybe 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5.5 maybe, I think it was. Somewhere around there.
But just to sum it up, this was a slugfest, which is fine when Bradshaw is doing all the slugging. And, Scott Hall's tank was pretty much empty by this point. Scott Hall was pretty much like, hey, I don't care. I've had enough. I'm more concerned about alcohol and pills at this point than my own wrestling career, which, hey, got some Jack Daniels. I don't mind that. But Scott Hall would disapprove of that. But other than that, it's a shame and a waste at this point. Because 2002, you really started to hype up the NWO. Everybody was excited to see the NWO, even though initially McMahon only wanted to bring back Hogan. But, people in the back, hey, let's bring back Hall and Nash. And it's like, listen, those two were to be on their best behavior in the back. They're just trying to be like one of the boys. We're not here to cause no trouble. You may think we're a lethal dose of poison, but hey, we're just trying to be your nice Pillsbury Dough fucking biscuits. Nice and soft. Take it easy, fellas.
Oh boy, what do we have next?
And we go to our next segment. In the back, we had Vince McMahon barges into Ric Flair's office and he asks him, if there's a method to his madness, and naming himself the special guest referee. And just to put it there, only time will tell. We shall see as we go on through the rest of this review. But coming up next, ladies and gentlemen, we have the WWF Women's Championship on the line as Jazz takes on Trish Stratus. Something that I told you before, Raw exclusive title. Because a lot of these titles weren't exclusive yet, as the titles were still bouncing around. The IC title throughout the year went between Raw and SmackDown. The tag team titles at the time was only one set before they decided, hey, we're going to have 2 sets, which I'm glad they did, because if they didn't bring out SmackDown tag team titles, we probably wouldn't have gotten the greatest tag team match of that year with Chris Benoit and Kurt Angle taking on Edge and Rey Mysterio. Favorite match of all time, which is another DVD I ended up finding at MMJ.
That's your favorite match of all time? Period?
Not my favorite match of all time, but my favorite match from that year.
Okay, yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But going into these two, these two met on the first ever brand extended Raw, which, these two have had some pretty decent matches throughout the course of the year going into 2003. I've always enjoyed Jazz.
Very underrated.
Very underrated. I think. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, so Molly Holly, who lost a number one contenders match to Trish, accused Trish of cheating, which she did, and lays her out before the match. And Jazz, she grabs her and side slams Trish. Trish fights back, but gets rolled up. And oh boy, I gotta restart my screen. What the hell? Come on, my notes. But if you want to take it away with this match as I recover my notes here.
Yeah, I mean, this was before Trish was Trish. Like, this was, I always said, like, WrestleMania 19, which is my favorite pay-per-view. But that's when Trish became Trish Stratus. And, which also, I think Jazz was in that match as well, with Victoria.
Yes.
And, this match is okay for a women's match. There's not too much to say about this, really. I don't know. It's like I said, it's just a women's match. And to go back to what you said about, the titles jumping around, this was when they were, because this is the first pay-per-view after the brand extension. So, the titles were still trying to find their home. And they were really trying to figure out, okay, we have this brand extension, what's going to work and what's not. Because that's something you have to test out. You can't just say, oh, let's put this title over here and see what happens. No, you got to really see, what title has the chemistry it needs with each show. And I always thought Raw should have the women's title. And, in conjunction with that, SmackDown have the Cruiserweight title. And I'm not a real big fan of women's wrestling at this time. So, this is, it is what it is, as I always say. It's not the most exciting match ever, but, Jazz was always underrated to me. You never see her get mentioned, ever.
Right.
I think she deserves mentioning. Like, she's up there, for sure. So,
it's pretty nice to see her make somewhat of a resurgence in AEW as well. That's definitely one woman I wouldn't sleep on. Not sure how she's doing nowadays, but if AEW were to sign her a contract, I'd say, hey, go for it.
yeah.
But looking at Jazz, she was just pure dominance in this match. She plants Trish with a sit-out power bomb. She chokes out Trish on the ropes. She counters the Stratisfaction to a cradle slam for two. And then we see Jazz working on the legs. She sets her up with that dragon screw, sets her up with the Boston Crab, and then an STF for the submission, which this match ended up as a short match. Surprisingly, I wish this match would have went on a little bit longer. This was right around the time people started recognizing that Trish was maturing as a wrestler, I would say.
Yeah, like I said, this was before she was Trish Stratus.
Right.
It's like a good way to look at it is like John Cena during his Thugonomics gimmick. Like, he wasn't John Cena yet,
Right.
Like, because, she's probably, I would say, to modern fans, she's probably the most recognizable name ever for women's wrestling. Just mainstream-wise. And she had a slow build. She really did. Like, I remember when she was fucking barking like a dog, and she was involved in the whole McMahon gimmick in 2000, where she was wheeling Linda around.
Yeah.
So she came a long way, and this was 2002. She was really building to that, and then 2003 is when they really pulled the trigger.
I definitely agree with that. And, same thing with like John Cena too, because the way I picture John Cena going through his thugonomics to which something that he would eventually become today, it's like kind of like reality when people go through their teenage years and then they finally, adjust as an adult. That's the way I kind of look at John Cena.
Yeah, they're finding themselves. Yeah.
Right.
And it kind of
And
JBL at this time too. That's another really good example. He was finding himself.
took a little longer for JBL, but eventually he ended
It
up.
did, yeah. And when he found himself, he fucking found himself. Because that JBL character was just... That was gold.
Wrestling god.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, going on to the next moment here. It was a recap of Paul Heyman, sniffing Lita's panties and offering to tell Brock Lesnar to take it easy on Matt Hardy if she plays nice with him. Lita refused, so Brock destroyed Matt with a F5 on the entrance ramp. I remember that so vividly too. I was just like, Matt, I wouldn't want to fuck with him. Like, please don't, just stay back. But
Yeah.
we ended up getting the risk taker, the other half of the Hardy Boys here, as Brock Lesnar making his pay-per-view debut against Jeff Hardy. And I'm just going to put it at this. This match was about a 5-minute match. And basically, Brock Lesnar won by technically knocking out Jeff Hardy, or Teddy. Ironically, Teddy Long's in this match. Teddy Long stopping the match, being concerned over Jeff's health, especially after taking several fucking power bombs.
Yeah, this would be considered a TKO, technical knockout, because he's not knocked out, but it's. I'm a big MMA fan, so it's just like when a referee can tell that they're just in danger and they can't take it anymore, and they ring the bell. And it's in 2002 especially, like, it's just like Teddy Long as a ref. To me, I'm sorry, he was never a ref. I always saw him as the personality. And
Right.
this match was exactly what it was meant to be and supposed to be. Brock, he made his debut after WrestleMania 18. And I'll never forget the chair shots he took from Matt and Jeff. I don't know if you've seen that. You remember that?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, that hard whack that he did to Brock's face, and Brock Lesnar's just like, he's still standing. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I remember Jeff just fucking whomped him with it. But, and we all know what happens at SummerSlam with Brock. So they were building him up, and this is what it should have been. It was a really long squash match.
Yeah.
I think this was like 5 minutes as well. So, yeah, this was it's good for character building, and I'm a Paul Heyman guy, so I love seeing Paul Heyman and Brock Lesnar together, especially during this. They were developing that next big thing, and this match, a lot of people didn't know it maybe at the time that he was actually the next big thing, but this was a nice little bump in the road for him.
This was definitely the reckoning of what would soon become the next big thing, Brock Lesnar. And the way I see this match, this was a pretty decisive victory for Brock. And it certainly got him over as a monster, I guess you would say, as being like one of the most dominant forces during this time. But, in 2002, let's just put it in McMahon's words, monsters were passe. So, Brock at that time, he proved to be a wrecking ball. He was just like, when I was first experienced Brock, growing up and everything, he was that intimidating factor which you would want in everybody or every superstar who at least debuts, especially when it comes to big guys. So, like, if you look at like Undertaker when he debuted at Survivor Series, Kane when he made his appearance at the '97 Bad Blood Hell in a Cell match, and then you got guys like Brock Lesnar who's basically dismantling all these fucking little guys and high flyers and power bombing Spike Dudley or Al Snow through trash cans and tables, and technically knocking out Jeff Hardy to a state of consciousness where he's unable to compete. That's what made Brock Lesnar Brock Lesnar. Not the guy that you see nowadays who performs like 20 German suplexes and then hits 5 F5s for a victory. But this was, fresh out of amateur / developmental Brock Lesnar. So this was like Brock Lesnar that you wanted to have on your team.
Yeah, and this was when Brock Lesnar was still hungry. Because nowadays, he phones it in. Like, he'll probably have one good match, maybe, at like a Survivor Series, and that's about it. Whereas this was when he wanted to be successful. This was before he was making $12 million a year for 12 appearances. So this was when you have, I've always said, one of the greatest of all time is Brock Lesnar when he wants it, when he tries. And then he has that bad reputation because 90% of the time he's just lazy.
Right.
And I know John Cena said he thinks Brock Lesnar is the greatest of all time, which, that's fine. Imagine what we would get if he was putting in 100% effort every time. Like, Brock, he's smart, he knows what he's doing, but he's a businessman. He knows how to make the money with doing less. And that's sad because he really is a great talent.
Right. Definitely. I mean, you can't sit there and say that Brock Lesnar is not a future Hall of Famer because I
Oh,
mean
yeah. Well,
he did make a quick upstart by the time he debuted. So
he beat the streak, too. So that's an automatic induction right there.
yeah, first class ticket right there. But going on to our next match here, very favorable match of you and me.
Oh, yeah.
Especially this match. We had Edge versus Kurt Angle out of the Edge and Kurt Angle matches that we would see, and the last pay per view that we would see Kurt Angle with a full set of hair. Well, if you want to count Judgment Day, but technically wrestling with a full set of hair. Let's just put it that way. But go ahead.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I fucking hate Edge's entrance music so much here. It's the most generic goddamn bullshit. Ain't nothing gonna stop me. Nothing's gonna stop. Like, fuck you. Like, it's just so bad and stupid. Like, Edge is this great fucking hardcore character, and you just have this bland fucking generic music. Ask me what my least favorite theme song of all time for any wrestler is. This is it. I fucking hate it.
Well, you know, it's kind of like one of those, mental images in your mind where wherever you hear this song now, you're automatically going to think of Edge.
Yeah, like I fucking hate this song, and it's so not Edge. Like, it's just not. And I think even he said he fucking disdained this music. And I was like, all right. And then I finally listened to it again. I'm just like, oh god, like I understand. Like, this is not Edge. This music is fucking trash. I hate it. It doesn't belong anywhere near wrestling. Like, this is up there with like Candice Michelle's music. Like the fuck, like, oh god, it's just so awful. I hate it.
But getting on
When
with these two, Angle and Edge. Angle was good enough to have great matches with just about anybody, but this was around the time that he wasn't a draw. So he got stuck working with Edge, which is not a bad thing because those two put on one hell of a match.
Well, I mean, at the time, this was before Edge was like insanely over and the star he was. So in a way, this was a demotion for Kurt Angle, but at the same time, look what we got out of it.
And you got to remember this too. This was also around the time that Edge was also seen as a potential draw, but who was still getting his feet wet as a
Yep.
single star because he had recently just got betrayed by Christian after the 2001 King of the Ring. So after those two separated, it was like, all right, let's see what we could do with the both of them as singles competitors. And something that I'll agree with you on. I mean, I do love Edge, but I will always prefer Christian always over Edge. But
Yeah, they're both great. I just love Christian Cage so much for like his work in TNA and stuff. And Edge, I will say he's the better worker out of the two. But I think Christian, there's something about him that I just always love, that personality and that bravado. Christian's great, man.
yeah, I tell you what, one more match, one more. If Edge can do it, Christian can definitely have somewhat of a longevity match without fighting Orton with clothes on and getting punted in the head. But
I'll tell you what, man. I will wet my fucking pants if him and Edge get the tag team titles one more time. I would shit myself. Like, that, to me, like, that would be a dream. They're one of my favorite tag teams ever. And just to see, and I don't care, if people were like, oh, but they're old talent. You're supposed to put it over the new talent. Well, guess what? It's Edge and Christian. They're better than 90% of the people we have nowadays.
you know what? Let's do it for these guys right here. For all the benefits of flash photography, me and the DVD Freak are going to do a 5-second pose.
You ready?
But, getting back on the Edge here, this was seen, he was seen as a potential draw in order to make him look good. So, Edge took full advantage of the opportunity, I would say, and eventually led him to main event status, which we wouldn't see for another 4 years, which I could see why, because obviously he went through the neck injuries and they tried to rebuild him back up. And around mid 2000s, late 2000s, he became one of the best heels of all time.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Hell yeah.
And interestingly, Kurt assumes the veteran role, in this aspect, I guess you would say, because just because of Angle's background as an Olympic gold medalist who won an Olympic gold medal with a broken freaking neck. But, he has that amateur background, but at the same time, he picked it up so quickly. Same thing with Brock, as we were just talking about earlier. Or, the odd thing about this is Edge actually has several more years of experience on him, more than Angle. So the fact that Edge is getting kind of the rookie treatment over Angle, despite Edge debuting a year before Angle, it's kind of weird. But at the same time, Angle, like I said, he picked up on it really, really quick, and that's what made him one of the faster rising stars of the 2000s.
Well, you have to also look at it. Edge was in a tag team, and when you
Right.
split a tag team up, you're gonna put them lower. They have to prove themselves as a single superstar. But this match, I forgot how fucking amazing this match is. This crowd, they lit up. Like, this, to me, this is one of my favorite Kurt Angle matches. I would say my favorite is him and Benoit or him and Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. But, like, I'd put this at, like, number 3, and this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Edge matches. Like, this is just new level. And no one really expected this, too, because it's in the middle of the card. It's just kind of this rivalry that really has nothing on the line. There's not a title on the line or anything. So this was like a surprise. It woke up the crowd, man. Like, they were so into this. I was marking out for it, and this happened 18 years ago. Like, this is just, oh my god, this is one of those matches that I'm like, all right, this is why I'm a wrestling fan,
And you know what? This was a case of Edge, fights fire with fire. He's hitting a couple belly to belly suplexes. We've seen some German suplexes, missile drop kicks. He kicks out of an angle slam, which was probably the most surprisingly out of this match.
There were a lot of near falls in this match.
A lot of near falls. This is what I liked about this match, because it was very back and forth and very anticipating. So it was like, just when you thought it was finished, nope, not yet. Then we'll see Angle gets frustrated and grabs the chair, but it backfires when he misses and swings, and it bounces back into his face, and that gets two and sets up for the spear, but Angle gets the boots. boots him in the face, and then finishes off with another angle slam, which this match was almost 14 minutes. And let me tell you, this was one of those matches that made people sit up and take notice of Edge as a real single star. He always had the look of a star, but in 2002, I would say he started to grow into that role. Had it not been for injuries, I would say, if it had not been for injuries, he probably would have been a main eventer the following year.
Yeah, I mean, with WrestleMania 19, I think he would have been in a marquee match for sure. And he missed 2 WrestleManias, 19 and 20. And I think at both of those, he would have been great. But at the same time, look at what we did get at WrestleMania 21 with him winning Money in the Bank. So, I don't believe in fate or anything, but like just by coincidence, it all worked out. And who knows, it might not have worked out if he was at those WrestleManias. It all happens the right way. So I think those injuries, I think it helped him.
Well, let me tell you this. I mean, obviously, WrestleMania 19, I think he was supposed to be Benoit's partner in that triple threat tag team match at WrestleMania 19. So
really,
I think that's the only reason why they replaced him with Rhino. That's why they had Rhino teaming up with Benoit. Obviously, both of them knew how to do a spear, so they were like, "Well, we don't have Edge. We're going to have a Rhino."
I
have no problem with Rhino.
They're just like, if we can't get a spear, we might as well get a gore.
Yeah, doesn't make it's different, right? Just a different name.
Yeah.
They probably went backstage to Rhino like, "Hey, we got some free catering here if you want to be involved in this WrestleMania 19 match." Like, yeah, why not? Get some cheese whiz with some crackers. Puh, I'm living a life. But
you and that fucking cheese whiz and crackers.
But going on to the next segment here, we had Chris Jericho complaining that he wasn't booked for the show, so he's leaving the arena. And, he's definitely not hanging around. Certainly not for the main event. But going on to another match that I would say another match that stole the show. And, we're switching it over now. Now we're on the Raw side of things. We have the Intercontinental Championship on the line with 2 guys who are perfectionists at hitting a frog splash, I would say. Rob Van Dam versus Eddie Guerrero. Now, Eddie Guerrero had made his triumphant return on the first Raw after the brand split and laid RVD out. Eddie, you know what? This match going in all together, it was another back and forth type matchup. I mean, well, actually, no. I mean, this was more one sided, but, they picked up the right one side to dominate, you would say. Eddie really needed this kind of dominating performance to, cement his comeback. And kudos to Van Dam for letting Eddie turn him into his bitch, I guess you would say. But other than that, I love these guys. They had some pretty good matches around this time. I'm not sure if you guys recall the ladder match that those two had on Monday Night Raw, and then you had that fan interfering into the match.
I was just gonna mention that. That's a very forgotten ladder match. It's like Jeff Hardy and RVD. Nobody talks about that ladder match to unify the European and Intercontinental belts. RVD and Eddie Guerrero, they had some fucking chemistry for sure. And this was when Eddie, he was fresh, he was sober, he was really trying to prove himself due to, he was let go before. And this was really his second chance in WWE. And he was taking this seriously. And like you said, he's a perfectionist. He's a Benoit. He's an absolute perfectionist. And then you have RVD, who's the whole fucking show. So, that dynamic itself is going to get you a great match. But going into what you said before about the Jericho segment, I did want to say this. It's smart because even though Jericho's not on the show, this was a good way of still having heat with him and still having him involved.
Yeah.
Because it would be stupid to just not have him on the show at all. So this is one of the. This was back when WWE did smart things, and they actually showed some intelligence. It's little details like, oh, let's have Jericho just kind of show up in this little segment. It's keeping continuity. It's great. It's making sure he's still involved, even though he's not on the pay-per-view itself. So.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely agree on those standards. Nothing less. But obviously, we would see the heat pick back up between Chris Jericho at one of the following pay-per-views, which we'll get onto at another date. But you know what? I'm not going to lie. I love the arsenal of Eddie Guerrero in this match, nonetheless. I love how he hit a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker and a Mexican surfboard into a dragon sleeper.
Yeah.
Wow. Yikes. I love dragon sleeping. Owen Hart ended up using it later on in his career, but to do a Mexican surfboard into a dragon sleeper, that must hurt. That's excruciating pain for me. But you know what? Talking about Van Dam letting Eddie Guerrero get the win in this match, it paid off too because the two had a memorable feud and both guys came out of the summer better for it. Let's just put it that way. I mean, RVD would somewhat have a push in late 2002, challenging Triple H for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then, I mean, Eddie Guerrero, he was still having big feuds. He ended up going against like Edge throughout the summer, but then he started teaming up with his nephew Chavo, and they became one of SmackDown's greatest tag teams. So Eddie was still getting a little bit of that shine, but it wasn't until 2003, 2004 where we see Eddie Guerrero catapult to the top.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love Los Guerreros so much. But Eddie's a single star. And that's no devotion to Chavo. Like, I love Chavo Guerrero. I do. I think he's very underrated. But, they had their little tag team run. But Eddie, for me, he will always be that singles star. One of the greatest of all time. I remember his WCW matches. One of my favorite matches ever, him and Ray at Halloween Havoc. Like, goddamn. Like, he took it to a new level. And, he was so over with the fans, even though technically he was this piece of shit wrestler who would lie, cheat, and steal. Like, that's when you know you're good. When you can capture the fans at the same time as just being that piece of shit, And, like I said, this was his big second chance. So he was really trying to prove himself. So this was a great time to be an Eddie Guerrero fan because he was putting his all into it. Because he realized, if I fuck up this time, I got nothing.
Right. And, I mean, unfortunately, I don't like to be that, that stereotypical guy. But, Eddie Guerrero at that time, as you said, he wanted to take this more seriously. Obviously, we've seen him take it more seriously when it comes to body mass as well, because obviously he was here, he got jacked.
Well, and look what happened. So
yeah.
Unfortunately.
But going into this next match here, we had a number one contenders match with special guest referee Ric Flair, Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker. And this was practically the last year for Stone Cold Steve Austin as his career finally started to dwindle down. He was starting to get involved in storylines that he wasn't necessarily in favor of, or whether he was in favor of, he wanted to go his way. And, going up against Undertaker, we've seen Undertaker and Steve Austin in numerous pay-per-view battles since 1997. You know, you look at 97, the SummerSlam Highway to Hell match that they had. You know, some of the matches that they had at 99, which ironically, it was actually Over the Edge 1999, 4 years ago from this date, that they faced each other for the WWE Championship, and Undertaker won in the main event.
Wasn't it 3 years?
Yes. Wait.
Yeah. Because Owen was 99, right?
Yeah, 99. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I misled that. But yeah, it was 3 years from this date that, you know, Taker and Austin fought for the WWE Championship at Over the Edge. And now here we are, 2002, you know, 3 years later, and Undertaker's making a resurgence as like one of the big main event players going for the WWE Championship. And Austin's kind of just floating around. It's like, hey, we still consider you a top guy, but we just don't know where to put you. And I think this was around the time where Austin wasn't drafted, but he was able to choose what show he went on, which eventually he would end up choosing Raw. And I don't know about you, but I felt like this match took forever.
Oh my god. I was just gonna ask, am I the only one that hated this match? This went 27 fucking minutes. Yep. And like, it's overbooked. This could have went 18 minutes easy. A lot of this is just filler, you know, Austin getting beat up.
Right.
And I understand like the whole Ric Flair dynamic, and which this is one of my favorite Ric Flair moments, the segment after it, which we will talk about, so I won't spoil it now. But this match was just so goddamn boring. Like, it's just, I understand a lot of it's story, but this didn't have to go 27 minutes. I was just sitting there rewatching this, and I'm just like, good God, this is just dragging. I feel like this was just to honestly take up time.
Right. And then you also had NWO, who was, you know, saunters out, to observe this match, which is like, you know, we don't have to see another Scott Hall versus Stone Cold Steve Austin match.
Fuck it's like, no, we don't.
You guys don't have to be out here, but obviously, you know, Flair had somewhat of an association with the NWO, which obviously led to Ric Flair drafting these guys. But it's like, you didn't want these guys, but you end up drafting them anyway. So, like, what was the point of that?
Yeah.
But, you know, this match ends in an even 27 minutes. Austin's foot was on the rope, but Flair didn't see it. That led to, I guess you would say this led to Flair's heel turn. And, you know, a summer's worth of horrible booking, I guess you would say, for Ric Flair, because this was also around the time that Ric Flair had a low self-esteem on confidence.
Yeah.
And so Triple H decided, hey, I'm going to take you under my ring. But later on into the year, and the NWO added nothing to this match other than just standing around observing, like, ooh, let's go check out this match. Like, maybe Austin will throw us some beer. You know, like, God forbid, hopefully they're cold. Stone Cold's going to be there, and like, I ain't thirsty. But
oh God, yeah.
You know, the match started out okay, but once they tried to wrestle instead of brawl, it turned into a car wreck, and not the entertaining kind.
Yeah, this was like I said, this could have been done in 18 minutes or even 15. And the finish is it's okay, but like, I don't know. I think Ric Flair being put into this. When I think of a number one contenders match, maybe I'm being too logical about this. A number one contenders match should always be fair.
Yeah.
Like, that's because that's your that's picking your number two guy. So why the fuck put Ric Flair in it? I get for heat, but I don't know. This didn't feel like a number one contenders match either. It just felt, this was just a grudge match to me. And There was still heat with Ric Flair and Taker from WrestleMania, which
Right.
is, like I said, one of my favorite WrestleMania matches. But I just really feel like Ric Flair should not have been involved. Fuck the NWO. Let's have just two guys go at it for 15 minutes. There you go.
Basically, yeah. And then obviously we would lead to the backstage segment with Jonathan Coach. You know, he basically just intercepts Flair and he shows him the replay of the ending of the match. And Flair's reaction was just like, oh shit.
Yeah, it wasn't even oh shit. It was just like this. All right, you have to understand. This is one of my favorite moments in the history of wrestling. You have Ric Flair. He's just like shit, and then walks away. I was geeking for this. Like this is I fucking for some reason. I don't know if it was just because it was at 3 a.m. that I watched this, but I was dying. I love the delivery. Shit. Like it's just great. Like I love it.
But then we go on to the next match, which I would consider the bathroom break, and that was for the WWF Tag Team titles between Billy and Chuck with their hairstylist Rico taking on the team of Al Snow and Maven. Um, like I said, this match was just here to give people a bathroom break, and in between the Austin and Taker match, and the Hogan and Triple H match, which was soon to come. Nothing really special. The crowd chants Rico's gay. So he tells, so that he's telling the crowd, "Oh, talk to the hand," and God forbid he has to be a bitch about it. They quickly realized that it would be much more productive to have Al play, this facing. I don't know. This match was just kind of like random. Let's just put it that way. This match was just like pure random, and I think the only reason why this match was put together was because WWE's tag team division wasn't as good at the time. It didn't really develop into a good tag division until like later on, and they actually like split the brands and actually had two sets of tag titles. Because this was like around the time where they were just throwing guys together. I mean, obviously that's been going on for a long time, but like for instance, if you looked at like '97, where they decided to put Steve Austin with Dude Love and have them win the tag team titles, you really got to think of the tag team division at that time. Most of that division at that time was all factions. You had the Nation of Domination, you had the Disciples of Apocalypse, you had Los Boricuas, and then you just had a whole bunch of other random tag teams that were just like thrown together. I mean, you had the Hart Foundation too, which was probably the greatest faction at that time.
Yeah.
But you had guys like Philip and LaFont. You had the Godwins. You had the Headbangers. So the tag division is in comparison to '97. Obviously, you don't have a lot of factions, but the tag division is just weak. So Billy and Chuck, that I would consider probably one of the best tag teams at this time, top tag teams at this time, nonetheless, is going up against a trainer and his trainee.
Yeah. I love Billy and Chuck. I love Rico. I've said that how many times now? And this, unfortunately, a lot of the times, especially back then, you would have a match that has a lot of heat, which was Taker and Stone Cold with Ric Flair as the guest referee. Obviously, the crowd was into that one. There's a lot of heat for that. So you don't want to put that beside your main event because you want the crowd to be lively for your main event. So they're like, oh, let's just put this on there so they can just chill for a few minutes and then get rowdy. I'll quote JJ, get rowdy for the main event. So, yeah, I would have preferred this somewhere else on the card. But I feel like it's just like Billy and Chuck, like I said, I love them. But even the opponents, like this was just filler. Like, obviously, they're not losing the titles here.
Yeah, and them losing the titles to Snow and Maven, it definitely wouldn't have gotten over at
Yeah.
this point. At
Yeah.
this point, after WrestleMania, WWE knew what the fuck they were doing with Maven. They didn't want nothing to do with Maven. They were just going to use enhancement talent and, a nice, good-looking guy who could throw a nice drop kick. Let's just put it that way. And I hate to say it, but anyway, going on to the main event of the evening here, we had the undisputed World Wrestling Federation Championship on the line as Triple H defends the newly designed World Wrestling Federation Championship against Hulk Hogan. And, we had that awesome shot of, Hogan staring over Hunter's shoulder before the match begins. And this was a time both guys were baby faces. Surprisingly, Triple H is a baby face, which that's weird.
Yeah, it's like Edge being a baby face. It just doesn't work.
No. But both guys were baby faces coming in, but Hogan was riding the nostalgia wave. Everybody was there because of Hogan.
Yep.
You could probably think of any other fucking match on this book. I mean, maybe Austin, but everybody was there to see the return of Hulk Hogan, just to see if he would be victorious in becoming a 5-time WWE or WWF, at the time, champion. And, I think, this match wasn't as bad, but it was like, it's kind of like one of those things where you ask yourself, this is kind of like the brilliance of wrestling, where it's like you have Hogan and you're looking at Hogan like, can you bump? Can you wrestle? Can you do this? I mean, obviously we've seen some of that factor in the WrestleMania match between The Rock. Not as overselling as the match between Hogan and Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam 2005.
Oh, God.
But, yeah. This was actually pretty cool because we seen Hogan hit a like an ace cutter type move, and that was kind of a holy shit moment right there, because you don't really see a whole lot of offense from Hogan besides hitting punches and chops and big boots, and then tries to hit the leg drop. Because most of the time throughout the match, Hogan's just going to pull off this fucking belt and whip you with it.
Yeah. For this match, this is wrestling, I guess. You have Hulk Hogan lose at WrestleMania, and hey, at Backlash, you get the world title. But like I said earlier, this was them cashing in on Hogan being over. If you want that ratings bump, you want merch, it's the money. This was the money match. Because, the night after WrestleMania, that ovation that Hogan got is like none other. And, like I said, I think it was a horrible decision to have him beat Triple H. You don't just have somebody win the main event of WrestleMania, the world title, undisputed title, which I love the new undisputed title belt here. I fucking love that belt. That is a beautiful belt. But you don't have him win that just to lose it at the next pay-per-view.
Right.
And this is a Rumble winner. He won the fucking Royal Rumble, went on to WrestleMania, won the title in the main event. Oh, but he loses it. Like, I want to know what the original plan was here, because obviously this wasn't the original plan. They didn't know Hogan was going to be this over. Because he came in as a heel in the NWO. And then the reception he got at WrestleMania was phenomenal. And then the reception he got the night after WrestleMania was just out of this world. So they're like, all right, put the title on him. He's going to draw money. He's going to sell merch. We got to do it now. Which I understand from a business decision, this was the right way to go. But that doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah. And the thing about this match is, here we go with the referee taking more bumps than the wrestler, because you had Chris Jericho coming out in the match. He whacks Hogan with a steel chair. Hunter's like, want to win fair. I'm not doing it that way, even though Triple H is known to use a sledgehammer. So it's like Triple H wants to win fair. That's kind of surprising right there, because you would expect, hey, maybe Triple H will get the win, but no. And but now we have Undertaker, who runs down, knocks out the referee again. Here we are, referee taking more bumps than the wrestlers. And Hogan's just like, no, I'm not winning that way. So now we're playing opposites of both sides here with the same type of ordeal here, where it's like, no, they don't want to win by cheating. They want to win fair. But, Hogan, he hits the leg drop on Triple H, and, this was somehow more honorable, I guess you would say, because Hogan gets a big pop for the win. But this was also around the time ratings kind of plummeled, because Hogan was champion, and Hogan took the blame, which was probably more due to the brand split and bad writing than anything that he did, I guess you would say. Of course, this all led to one of the funniest and saddest feuds in recent memory with, Hogan versus Undertaker, which we would see the same thing the next month as Hogan drops the belt after only holding the belt for 1 month. Same thing with Triple H. I think Triple H only held the belt for a month and 2 days.
I'll tell you what, man. I hate when you play hot potato with the belt. You look at like Bruno Sammartino. That to me makes the belt.
Right.
So it's just like, I really wish, like I said, I wish Triple H had the belt. And it's just like, I understand Hogan winning the belt for business, but like, it's just, and then you have Hogan beat Triple H for the title and then have him lose it again. So it was all for nothing. And Undertaker would do great things with the belt going on, after, not with the belt, but, obviously Rock won it, and then Brock Lesnar won it. So it's just like, who the fuck do you want as your champion at this point? You have Triple H, Hogan, Undertaker, The Rock, and then Brock. That's 5 champions within this few month radius, and I never liked when the belt changed hands that often, because it makes it a prop. I want the title to feel like a title. Bruno Sammartino, Hogan, I want the belt to be legitimate, and it's just not legitimate when when the wrestlers can't make the title, when they're just losing it so many times. Oh, I'm going to hold it for a month. Oh, I'm going to lose it. Fuck it. And then the person they lose it to loses it again in a month. Like, it's just like, what are we doing here? Like, this is a belt. You're supposed to legitimize it. Fuck.
Took the words right out of my mouth. What are you doing?
But, what are you doing?
Anyway, this match was awful. I'll just put it that way.
It was, yes.
This match was only good for the draw, because everybody wanted to see Hogan win the WWE Championship. And its only redeeming quality is Triple H's mapped out plan for like the first 18 minutes of this fucking match. Obviously, Triple H knew what he was doing more than fucking Hulk Hogan the last 3 minutes. So this match was only 22 minutes. Like 22 minutes and maybe like a couple seconds. But let's just put it this way. It was clear that the brand extension was going to be more of a bland extension. Let's just put it.
Oh, God.
Joke. I'm kidding. But putting the title on Hogan was a mixed bag at best. Ratings went down. Buy rates were stagnant. Even merchandising was down for some quarter of the year. Quarter of the year before. Most of that was due to, I would say, the brand extension and horrible, horrible booking. But at the same time, this was a new era in wrestling. This was 2002. This was over a year after the purchases of WCW and ECW. So there was no more competition. And this was really around the time, from a personal perspective, that independent scenes were very, dark, because independent wrestling wasn't as big as it is today. And this was around the time where there wasn't a lot of territories, or practically no territories at all by this point, which is why you would see the rise of TNA in 2002.
Yep.
And a lot of other guys try to make their companies. Like I think there was like XPW, which was basically like the second rise, or like the second coming of ECW, which then end up too well, because I think it only lasted maybe like a year or two. And then you had that other promotion that had like Hogan and like Lawler on commentary. I forgot the name of it, but it was like one of those shit bad wrestling shows that it was good bad. Let's put it that way. It was so bad, but you could still watch it at least. But more importantly, though, like the face of the WWF was now the face of the past.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting the WWE Championship on somebody who held this belt, 20 years ago. So are we going to be going through this resurgence of saying your prayers and taking your vitamins? Would you say this was a step back for Vince McMahon and him saying like, "Oh, I miss the good old days"?
It's him selling out. I wouldn't say it's him missing the good old days memory-wise, but it's him missing the good old days money-wise. Hulk Hogan, he's not the greatest in-ring wrestler of all time. He had some good Japan shit, I'll admit that. But he was the biggest straw they had other than Stone Cold.
Yep.
So, this was him with dollar signs in his eyes. But what would you give this for a letter grade, this overall pay-per-view?
Well, before I get to the letter grade, I just wanted to get through a couple other things here about this pay-per-view. So like I said, instead of them giving it to, the face of the future, they ended up turning the hands of time, giving it back to Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And for over half a decade, their mantra was, we're better than WCW because we have younger, faster, quicker, better wrestlers, and all they have is a guy coasting on the past. Well, now the WWF was pushing that same guy as their champion, and he was 5 years older, 5 years older after, this whole WCW tarnish and demise because of all the, just crummy storylines that all these old time guys were going through. And, I think this was around the time the WWF stopped being cool and kids moved on to hard drugs, sex, or whatever their chosen method of pissing their parents off was. The way I see it, if I had to give this a solid grade for Backlash 2002, I'm going to give this a C. Because it wasn't bad, but it wasn't that good. And that was basically, the mixed feelings with 2002. Because later on throughout the year, the other half of the year ended up being tremendous. But at the same time, this was around the time that, WWF was going through some changes. They were going through some licensing changes, changing the F or getting the F out and making it WWE. So they had to change their whole style. They couldn't be this, this TV 14 rating that they used to be. Obviously, they had to tone it down a little bit because now they're focused more on the entertainment aspects rather than uh, the hardcore aspects that they try to emulate with ECW, which is why the Attitude Era became somewhat of a success.
Yeah, I've always said I'll take Federation over Entertainment any day, but for letter grade, I would say a C as well. Unfortunately, the undercard delivered more than expected.
Yeah.
Whereas the main events, your marquee matches, were disappointing. Because you had the number one contenders match, and then you had the main event, which, like we were talking shit about, it's bad booking. This pay-per-view is a good example of seeing dollar signs. You know, this wasn't building towards the future. This in no way was preserving your talent. This was last minute Vince saying, "Oh, we can capitalize." And I really hate this main event. And I really didn't like the number one contenders match. But you did have a solid under and mid card. So if the main events, those two marquee matches were great, this could have been like an A pay-per-view. It's those two matches that really brought this down really bad.
Right.
And I hate to say that because, you know, in theory, Taker and Stone Cold should have been great. It was just overbooked, and 27 minutes long is just, that's ridiculous. And I think even Triple H and Hogan, they were like 22 minutes, I think it was.
Yeah.
Even that's a little long for Hogan at this time. You know, the booking is just really unfortunate. It really is. And that's why I go with a C. It's right there in the middle. Great undercard, decent mid card, bad main events.
Yeah. And, you know, I think the matches that really stole the show that made this, you know, a tolerable pay per view were, you know, Angle and Edge, and then RVD and Guerrero.
Yeah.
And then
Two great matches.
and then you had a pulverizing debut pay per view match for Brock Lesnar, which he would turn out to be a valuable asset within the next couple of months. The Cruiserweight Championship match in the beginning, uh, you know, phenomenal opener, you know, say the less. But, you know, the matches that really became a disappointing factor, which ended up just dragging, were, you know, Austin and Undertaker, which I believe this was their second pay per view that they fought, because they had fought at No Way Out. And now here they are fighting on another pay per view card. And then we had Triple H and Hogan, which I said, you know, it's WWF turning back the clock and putting the title on somebody who held it 2 decades earlier instead of focusing on the future.
Yeah, and that's one of those things, like I said. Unfortunately, that's where greed comes in because Vince was seeing dollar signs. That's it. If the crowd reacted bad to Hogan, this never would have happened. You know, it's
Right.
only because he was so over at this time and he wanted to capitalize. And I understand from a business position. I understand that. Trust me. But you got a bad product out of a good business decision. And even it didn't even really turn out to be that good of a business decision anyway. So it was kind of a lose-lose situation. Bad product and not that good of money.
Unfortunately, but we will soon get through all those trenches throughout the rest of this year.
Oh, hell yeah.
The next time you guys will see us, we'll be reviewing Insurrection 2002, the UK exclusive pay per view for the WWF, and the final aired WWF pay-per-view before going through the changes of World Wrestling Entertainment.
Yeah.
So, social media, Danny Bryant on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram at D_BNC187. And of course, you can find me on Twitter and YouTube at DandTheBeast94. So be sure you hit that subscribe button, especially if you're watching my channel and you're not subscribed. What are you doing? Hit that button. DVD Freak, where can we find you?
The DVD Freak on YouTube. I try to post daily. And the Wrestling DVD Room on Facebook. I also have a Facebook, but I don't really use it that much. I only really use it for the DVD Room. And then Instagram, _DVD Freak, because some ass fuck decided to take my username. So right there, pal. But yeah, you can follow me on there. And like I said, I'm not too big on social media. I mainly I'm a YouTube guy. So yeah, just check out my shit, I guess.
And be sure to tune in to all latest episodes of the Pro Wrestle Zone podcast. And until next time, guys, this has been the Pro Wrestle Zone podcast. Have a good night.
Peace.